already have a family, just not with you." Those words destroyed me as I stood holding his trophy, a handwritten list of 12 women he'd slept with during our marriage. 5 years he'd lived a double life. His business trips, taking other women on vacation. His late meetings, building a life with his girlfriend of 5 years, who his parents welcomed for Sunday dinners while I worked night shifts. 2 women had gotten pregnant. Our friends watched him parade these women at parties and said nothing. While I begged for a baby, he built the family I dreamed of, with someone else. Everyone knew my husband was living multiple lives, except me. I never thought I'd be sharing this story publicly, but the messages I've received from others who've been through similar betrayals convinced me it needs to be heard. If you're listening and this resonates with you, or you know someone trapped in manipulation, please subscribe. Your support helps this channel reach more people who need to recognize the subtle signs I missed for 10 years. This story contains manipulation tactics so insidious that anyone could miss them. I'll reveal exactly how I discovered each lie, confronted the women who knew about me, and reclaimed my dream of motherhood. Stay until the end to hear how I transformed my devastation into strength. Together, we can help others see what everyone around me refused to tell me. My name is Courtney. I'm 35 now, but when this story began, I was just 25, young, ambitious, and completely in love. We lived in a suburb outside Boston where I worked as a healthcare administrator, often pulling late shifts while pursuing my master's degree. For 10 years, I thought I had a normal marriage. Not perfect. What relationship is, but normal. The kind where you build a life together, make plans for the future, and dream about the family you'll create. We were married for 5 of those 10 years. High school sweethearts who grew up together, navigated college side by side, and seemed destined for that picture-perfect life everyone expected us to have. I remember standing at the altar, looking into his eyes, believing every promise he made. "For better or worse," he said. I didn't realize worse meant he'd be building that dream with multiple other women. I'm sharing this story now because I finally healed enough to talk about it. For years, I blamed myself. What did I miss? How could I have been so blind? But I've learned that when someone is a master manipulator, and trust me, he was, they can fool anyone. The most painful part wasn't just his betrayal. It was learning that our entire social circle, our friends, his family, even some of my coworkers, knew pieces of what was happening. They saw him with other women. They heard his lies. Some even met the woman he had a 5-year relationship with throughout our entire marriage. And no one, not one single person, thought I deserved to know. Since I was a little girl, I dreamed of being a mother. I come from a large, close-knit family, and I always imagined creating that same loving environment for my own children. We talked about having kids before we got married. We picked out names. We discussed how we'd raise them. Every birthday candle, every shooting star, every 11:11 on the clock. My wish was always the same, to start our family. Little did I know, he was actively preventing that dream from coming true with me, while potentially creating it with others. This is the story of how my husband stole 10 years of my life and my dream of motherhood. But more importantly, it's the story of how I finally discovered the truth, how I found my voice again, and how I rebuilt my life from the ashes of his betrayal. I met James during my junior year of high school. We were paired as lab partners in chemistry class. Ironic, considering the toxic relationship he'd eventually create. "You're way too smart to be stuck with me," he joked that first day, his voice carrying that charming hesitation that made you want to prove him wrong. Our connection was immediate. Late-night phone calls where we'd talk until my parents yelled at me to hang up, study sessions that turned into make-out sessions, weekend drives to nowhere with music blasting. When we both got accepted to the same college, it felt like fate. "I've never felt this way about anyone," he'd whisper, his breath warm against my ear. "You're the one, Court. You're it for me." The early years of our marriage were good. At least I thought they were. We bought our first house at 27, a small 3-bedroom colonial with a yard perfect for future children. Someday, this will be their playroom, I'd say, standing in the spare bedroom. Yeah, someday, he'd reply with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. I should have noticed the subtle shift in his tone whenever I mentioned children, but I was consumed with my career. Healthcare administration meant late shifts. I'd leave the house at noon and often wouldn't return until after 11 p.m., 4 nights a week. Sound of keys jingling in the door late at night. "Hey, you still up?" I'd call out, exhausted from a 12-hour shift. In the office, he'd respond, "Just finishing up some work." His job as a marketing consultant gave him a flexible schedule and frequent trips out of town. The house would be immaculate when I got home. No trace of dinner dishes, bed perfectly made. "How was Seattle?" I'd ask when he returned from trips. "Productive, exhausting, the usual." Then the shower would immediately run, always. Sound of water starting in the bathroom. There were calls he'd take in another room, text messages that made him smile in a way I rarely saw anymore. Names with heart emojis next to them in his phone. "Who's Katie?" I asked once, glimpsing his screen. "Just a colleague. We're working on the Thompson project together." He had detailed explanations for everything. Logical, convincing explanations that made me feel foolish for questioning him. "Why aren't there any photos of us on your Instagram?" I asked another time. "You know, I keep my personal and professional lives separate online. Clients don't need to see my personal business." 5 years into our marriage, my biological clock wasn't just ticking, it was pounding. I finished my master's degree, secured a promotion, and felt ready for the next chapter. One night, I prepared his favorite dinner, lit candles, and sat him down. "James, I think it's time we start trying for a baby." The look that flashed across his face, panic, should have told me everything. "The timing's not right," he said, pushing food around his plate. "My career's at a critical point. Let's revisit in 6 months." It was the same answer I'd hear for the next year, until everything unraveled with those devastating words, "I don't know if I want kids, or if I just don't want them with you." 6 months became a year of excuses. Each time I brought up having children, James had a new reason to wait. "The economy's too unstable right now. I might be up for a promotion soon. Let's wait until that's settled." "My parents are having health issues. It wouldn't be fair to them." Each excuse sounded reasonable on its own. But strung together, they created a pattern I couldn't ignore any longer. One morning over coffee, I confronted him again. "We've been having this conversation for over a year now. I'm turning 31 next month. I need to know if you really want children." "Of course I do," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Just not yet." That night, I found him on the phone in our home office, speaking in that low, intimate voice I hadn't heard directed at me in years. "I can't talk now," he whispered urgently when he saw me. "Work emergency, I'll be up soon." Something in my gut twisted. For the first time, I didn't believe him. This wasn't just about children anymore. Something fundamental was wrong in our marriage. 2 weeks later, James suggested we sell our house. "The market's hot right now. We could make a significant profit and upgrade to something better." It made financial sense, so I agreed. We listed the house and received an offer within days. The selling process moved quickly, too quickly. When I dropped by our realtor's office to sign some paperwork, she said something that stopped me cold. "I know this is difficult with the divorce and all, but you're making the right decision selling now rather than waiting." "I'm sorry, what divorce?" My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Her face drained of color. I thought James mentioned you were separating. I assumed." I signed the papers with shaking hands and drove home in a daze. That evening, I waited until James returned from drinks with colleagues. "The realtor mentioned our divorce today," I said without preamble. He froze, coat half off. "She misunderstood. I said we might need to upgrade for more space for a family eventually." Stop lying to me, James. What's really going on? For hours we talked in circles. He denied, deflected, minimized. It wasn't until 3 a.m. when I finally said I was calling his parents to ask what they knew that his facade cracked. I'm not sure I want children, he admitted. Or maybe I do, but... But what? His eyes finally met mine. Or maybe I don't want them with you. The words hit like a physical blow. 10 years together, 5 years of marriage, countless conversations about our future family. All built on a lie. I need time to figure things out, he said. Space to think. The irony was, he already had space. The apartment he claimed to have rented just a month ago, where he'd been spending 3 or 4 nights a week to be closer to the office, apparently wasn't new at all. How long have you had this apartment? I asked. His hesitation told me everything. About a year. A year. While I worked late shifts, while I finished my degree, while I planned our future, he had been living a separate life. The sale of our house finalized the following week. As we divided our possessions, I noticed how easily James separated our life together. Like he'd been mentally preparing for this for years. Perhaps he had. The night we handed over the keys, reality finally hit me. Standing in our empty living room, I asked the question I'd been afraid to voice. Is there someone else? It's complicated, he said, which wasn't a no. How long? Court, it doesn't matter now. How long? There have been connections, nothing serious. Another lie, but I didn't know that yet. I didn't know about the list. I didn't know about the 5-year relationship. I didn't know about the pregnancies. I didn't know that nothing serious meant 12 women. As we parted ways that night, me to a friend's spare room, him to his not-so-new apartment, I felt the first stirrings of anger replacing the shock. Something wasn't adding up. The man driving away wasn't the James I thought I knew, and I was beginning to suspect that the James I knew had never existed at all. I didn't realize then that this wasn't the end of our story. It was merely the first thread unraveling in a tapestry of deception that would take me another year to fully uncover. The divorce process dragged on for a year that revealed the true depth of James's deception. Initially, I sought only closure, not revenge. My therapist suggested that understanding might help me heal, so I began reaching out to women whose names had repeatedly appeared in James's texts and calls. Most ignored me. A few expressed sympathy, but claimed they didn't want to get involved. Then Rebecca called me back. We need to talk, she said, her voice tense. Not over the phone, can we meet? Rebecca, the woman James had called like a sister, the colleague he'd mentored, the friend I shouldn't worry about. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop across town. I recognized her immediately, not from photos. James had been careful, but because I'd seen her before, at company events where she'd kept her distance, at one office party where James had introduced us with such practiced casualness that I'd thought nothing of it. I've been debating whether to tell you for years, she began, hands wrapped tightly around her mug. Part of me thought you must know on some level. Part of me thought it wasn't my place. Tell me what? Her eyes met mine. James and I have been together for 5 years. 5 years, our entire marriage. That's impossible, I whispered. We were married. We lived together. Not always, she replied. Not those nights he stayed at our apartment. Our apartment, the words echoed in my head. He told me you two were separated the entire time, she continued. That the marriage was just for appearances, for his family's sake. He showed me divorce papers. We were never separated, I said. And there were no divorce papers until now. Her face crumpled. He forged your signature. I saw them. I believed him. The revelations kept coming, each worse than the last. Rebecca had attended family dinners with his parents while I worked nights. They'd traveled together on his business trips. His family knew her as James's girlfriend and had welcomed her. I thought you were the fiction, she admitted. I thought I was the real relationship. We talked for hours, piecing together 2 parallel lives James had expertly managed. As painful as her revelations were, nothing prepared me for what came next. There were others, she said quietly, at least 5 that I know of. Others? Women he saw while seeing both of us. 1 was a client, 2 were old flames he reconnected with. There were one-night stands during conferences. How do you know this? Because one of them contacted me, just like you contacted me. We compared notes. Then another reached out. The room seemed to tilt. Did any of them? Did he ever? 2 got pregnant, she confirmed, answering my unspoken question. Neither kept the baby. He told them both he was childless and single. I stumbled out of that coffee shop with my world completely shattered. The man I'd loved, the man I'd begged to start a family with, had been building families with other women while telling me the timing wasn't right. That night, I called James's mother, something I'd avoided during our separation. Why didn't you tell me? I asked when she answered. A long pause. Tell you what, dear? About Rebecca, about the others, about Sunday dinners while I worked. Another pause. James said you had an arrangement, that you both saw other people. Did you believe that? Did you really think I would agree to that? We thought it was strange, she admitted, but James assured us you were both happy with the situation. One by one, I contacted mutual friends. Many avoided me. Those who responded shared variations of the same story. James had convinced everyone we had an open marriage, that I was comfortable with his dating, that I had my own relationships. I had been faithful for 10 years while being painted as someone who slept around. The final revelation came when I returned to our old house. The new owners had found a box in the attic crawl space and contacted me, thinking it might be mine. Inside was a journal. James had meticulously documented his conquests, names, dates, places. 12 women in total, spanning our entire relationship. Some entries included intimate details, others contained mementos, movie tickets, hotel keycards, notes. It wasn't evidence he'd accidentally left behind, it was a trophy collection. The last page contained a list, reasons not to have children with me, too career-focused, family history of depression, would want equal parenting. And then the sentence that broke something inside me. Better options available. I sat in my car outside our old house, that box of betrayal beside me, and finally let myself feel the full magnitude of what had happened. This wasn't just a failing marriage or a husband who'd had an affair. This was 10 years of calculated deception. This was a man who had systematically constructed an elaborate double life. No, multiple lives, while I remained completely in the dark. And everyone, our friends, his family, colleagues, even neighbors, had been audience to a play where I was the only one who didn't know my role. Looking back now, I can see the architecture of James's deception. It wasn't just that he lied, it was how he made me doubt myself whenever I got close to the truth. Gaslighting is a term thrown around so casually these days that it's lost some of its power. But that's exactly what he did. Systematically dismantled my perception of reality until I couldn't trust my own instincts. Remember that text from Katie with the heart emoji? When I asked about it, his response was textbook. Why are you checking my phone? Do you not trust me? The issue immediately shifted from his suspicious behavior to my supposed insecurity. When I tried to explain, he interrupted. You know, you're sounding exactly like my ex. She was obsessively jealous too. That simple comparison did 2 things. Made me feel like I was being crazy and ensured I'd never bring it up again for fear of being like the jealous ex. When I noticed perfume that wasn't mine, it's probably from hugging Sarah at the office. You know she wears too much. Why are you creating problems? When he came home at 2 a.m., you're keeping track of my hours now? The server crashed and we had to rebuild the entire campaign. Ask Mark if you don't believe me. He knew I wouldn't call Mark. It would make me seem paranoid. When I found hotel receipts for 2 guests, they automatically print it that way. I told you the client meeting ran late and they comped me a room. Why would I lie about that? Each explanation was detailed and specific, hallmarks of a practiced liar. And each confrontation ended the same way, with me apologizing for doubting him. His precision was chilling. He knew exactly which nights I worked late. My schedule was posted a month in advance, giving him plenty of time to plan rendezvous at our house. The neighbor who later contacted me described seeing different women enter our home within minutes of my car leaving the driveway. When I traveled for conferences or family visits, he would bring women to our bed, knowing exactly when my flight would land. During his own business trips, he'd send photos of hotel lobbies and conference rooms, evidence of his whereabouts, while spending evenings with other women. Sometimes he'd bring them along, putting the room on his corporate card under the guise of a business expense. He'd call me from these trips, his voice echoing in a bathroom as he described how exhausted he was from back-to-back meetings, while another woman waited in bed. The cruelest part? My empathy was his greatest weapon. When I'd question discrepancies, he'd turn wounded. "I can't believe, after all we've been through, you still don't trust me. Do you know how much that hurts?" And I'd backtrack, comfort him, apologize, because I couldn't bear causing him pain. My compassion was the very thing he exploited to continue betraying me. After learning about Rebecca, I asked how he'd managed to maintain a 5-year relationship while married to me. "It wasn't hard," she admitted. "Your schedule was predictable. He knew when you'd be working, sleeping, or visiting family. He planned everything around your absences. My entire routine, dedicated to building our financial security and future, had provided the perfect framework for his infidelity." 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I received a message from a woman who'd seen my social media post about healing from betrayal. "I lived across from you for 3 years," she wrote. "I saw him bringing women to your house whenever you worked nights. I wanted to tell you, but my husband said it wasn't our business. I'm so sorry." That's when I understood. I wasn't blind, I wasn't stupid, I wasn't crazy. I was systematically manipulated by someone who had perfected the art of deception and enabled by a community that chose complacency over compassion. The most devastating revelation wasn't that James had cheated. It was discovering that an entire network of people had protected his secret, some actively, others through their silence. His parents knew. They'd hosted Sunday dinners with Rebecca while I worked night shifts. His father had once helped him move furniture into the apartment he shared with her. His mother had bought Rebecca a birthday gift, a cashmere sweater I later saw her wearing in photos from their Christmas celebration. "We thought you had an arrangement," his mother claimed when I confronted her. "Did you ever ask me about this arrangement? Did it ever occur to you I might not know?" "It wasn't our place to interfere in your marriage," she replied. "Our mutual friends knew. Mark, James's best friend, who stood beside him at our wedding, had covered for him countless times. He's working late, or we're grabbing drinks to discuss the Robertson account, were alibis I'd heard from Mark's own lips. Melissa, who I'd considered my closest friend, had seen James with Rebecca at restaurants, at concerts, even at a resort 3 hours away. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said when I asked why she'd never told me. Even casual acquaintances had witnessed pieces of his deception. The bartender at our favorite restaurant had seen James with different women but assumed I knew. A neighbor had observed women coming and going but didn't think it was her business. James brought women to group events, parties, barbecues, even a wedding, introducing them as colleagues or friends from college. In hindsight, it was brazen. He wasn't even hiding them. He was hiding me from them. Did you ever wonder why James never posted photos of us on social media? I asked Melissa during our last conversation. "I figured you were private people," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Then why was his Instagram full of group photos where I was conveniently absent? Did you ever question that?" "Court, you can't expect me to." "To what? Tell your friend that her husband is living a double life, that everyone knows but her, that she's wasting her fertility years with someone who's actively deceiving her? After the divorce, comments poured in on my social media posts about betrayal. Drop all those friends who didn't tell you, they never cared about you. 5 years and no one said anything? Those aren't friends, they're accomplices. The whole community failed you. They were right. It wasn't just James who betrayed me, it was an entire ecosystem of enablers. When I think of all the times I expressed my desperation for children, knowing now that multiple people listening knew James was stringing me along, the anger still feels fresh. Those were years I can never get back. Fertility I squandered believing in a future that others knew would never come. The code of silence around infidelity protects the wrong people. Not wanting to get involved is a coward's excuse. If you know someone is being deceived by a partner, especially when their life plans and dreams hang in the balance, your silence is complicity. I had lost my marriage, my home, and 5 years of my fertility. But looking at the community that had failed me so completely, I realized I'd also lost something else. My naivete about the true nature of loyalty. The day my divorce was finalized, I stood outside the courthouse feeling strangely hollow. Everything I thought I'd built over the past decade had been an illusion. At 32, I was starting over completely alone. The first months were the darkest. I moved into a sterile one-bedroom apartment that never quite felt like home. I took leave from work, unable to focus on anything beyond basic survival. I cycled through rage, despair, and a bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of sleep could cure. You're experiencing trauma, my therapist explained. Not just from the betrayal, but from having your entire reality called into question. She was right. I didn't just lose a husband, I lost my ability to trust my own perceptions. Every memory was now suspect. Every happy moment potentially staged. Had he been texting other women during our anniversary dinner? Was he thinking about Rebecca while holding my hand at my father's funeral? The first step toward healing was cutting ties, not just with James, but with everyone who had enabled him. I deleted numbers, blocked social media accounts, and sent brief messages ending friendships that had once seemed unbreakable. I can't have people in my life who watched me suffer and said nothing, I wrote to Melissa. She sent multiple apologies. I never responded. I found a trauma-informed therapist who specialized in betrayal. Unlike my first counselor, who focused on moving on, this one understood I needed to process what happened before I could move forward. Your brain is trying to rewrite 10 years of memories, she explained. That's not something you can rush. 6 months after the divorce, I made 2 decisions. I changed jobs to escape the pitying glances of coworkers who'd heard rumors, and I scheduled a consultation with a fertility specialist. I don't have a partner, I told the doctor, but I'm not willing to lose my chance at motherhood because I wasted 10 years with the wrong person. She nodded without judgment. You have options, let's discuss them. Learning about my fertility status was empowering. I had time, not unlimited, but enough. I began hormone testing and explored paths to motherhood I'd never considered: sperm donors, embryo adoption, traditional adoption, fostering. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based solely on what I wanted, not compromising for someone else's timeline. I joined support groups for women healing from infidelity. Their stories mirrored mine with eerie similarity: the gaslighting, the enablers, the stolen years. From them, I learned practical strategies for rebuilding self-trust. Start small, one woman advised. When you have a gut feeling about something minor, act on it. Each time you honor your intuition and it proves correct, you rebuild that connection. Slowly, I began reclaiming spaces that betrayal had tainted. I traveled alone to places James and I had visited, creating new memories to replace the contaminated ones. I redecorated my apartment with colors he would have hated. I adopted a cat despite his alleged allergies, which, like so much else, had probably been a lie. On my 33rd birthday, a day I'd once imagined spending as a mother, I gathered new friends for dinner. People who knew my story, who had earned my trust through consistency and honesty. We didn't toast to new beginnings or finding love again. Instead, I raised my glass and said, to believing people when they show us who they are the first time. Today, at 35, my life bears little resemblance to what I had planned. I'm pursuing motherhood on my own terms, with a fertility plan and savings dedicated to making it happen within the next year. I've built a smaller but infinitely more authentic circle of friends. I'm dating again, cautiously, with clearer boundaries and less willingness to ignore red flags. The woman who believed in fairy tales is gone. In her place stands someone stronger, more discerning, and unwilling to compromise on what matters most. James stole 10 years of my life, but he couldn't steal my future. When people hear my story, they often ask the same question. How did you miss the signs? The truth is, there aren't always dramatic red flags. Sometimes there are only beige flags, subtle inconsistencies you dismiss because everything else seems normal. Because the alternative, that your entire relationship is a lie, seems too outlandish to consider. But I've learned to recognize the warning signs that in hindsight were flashing all along. When someone consistently makes you question your own memory or perception, I never said that, or you're overreacting, pay attention. Your reality is being deliberately distorted. How someone handles conflict reveals their true character. If disagreements always end with you apologizing, even when you were the one hurt, that's manipulation at work. Excessive privacy isn't about boundaries, it's about compartmentalization. A partner who keeps their phone face down, leaves the room for calls, or maintains social media you're conspicuously absent from is often hiding something. Trust your body's signals. That knot in your stomach when their story doesn't quite make sense? It's your intuition screaming. Listen to it. Most importantly, value friends who tell hard truths. The people who warned me about James, however obliquely, were the ones I dismissed as negative or jealous. Meanwhile, those who enabled him by staying silent were the nice ones I kept close. If you're currently questioning your reality in a relationship, you're not crazy. That confusion is often the first sign that something is wrong. Document inconsistencies. Speak to people who have no stake in maintaining the status quo. Remember that someone who loves you will welcome clarity, not punish you for seeking it. And if you know someone being deceived, tell them. Yes, you risk the friendship. Yes, they might not believe you initially, but information is power. Power they desperately need to make informed decisions about their life. The messages I've received since sharing my story publicly have confirmed what I suspected. My experience, while extreme, is not unique. Countless others have had years stolen by partners who manipulated not just them, but entire social circles into enabling their deception. To those still in the dark, it's not your fault. The most intelligent, perceptive people can be deceived by someone determined to deceive them. And to those who've walked a similar path, your worth isn't diminished by someone else's betrayal. The ability to trust again, cautiously, wisely, isn't lost forever. He thought he destroyed me. Instead, I destroyed the power he had over my life, and now I'm sharing this so you can do the same.